Welcome to another episode of GamerHeads. My name is Roger, aka Rogue Leader 76, and with me this week I have two special guests from the Cross-Play Compatible Network. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Hey, this is Mike Ryan. We're throwing tags out there, so AKA Pezman Mike. I'm on the Controller Throwers podcast. We, of course, are part of the Cross-Play Compatible Network, and we talk about all things video games. And what sets us apart from all other podcasts is that the four of us can't stand each other.
Wow, that makes for an interesting podcast. And then Chris?
Yeah, and I'm Chris from Play Comics. You can find me on Twitter at PlayComicsCast. I have a show where we look at video games based on comic properties and how well they stick to that source material. I'm still trying to find the show that I'm copying, so if you're out there, let me know.
So, yeah, thank you both so much for being on the show today. We're actually going to be, our hot topic this week is going to be about actually just that, video game podcasts, and we'll go through if you know what value do video game podcasts bring to the industry. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. But before we go into that conversation, what I would like to do is go through some news. So we'll go through our GamerHeads news flash.
The GamerHeads news flash.
So the first thing that I saw, and both of you can jump in and chime in, and then if you have other news as well, certainly you can bring that up. But one thing that I saw was that the Fortnite Android app, there's fake ones being out there, it's being spread around on the internet, even though the game hasn't officially launched yet on the platform. So the app redirects users to a browser asking them to download a number of other apps in order to play the game, and then the scammers are paid each time someone downloads the app from that website. And what people are being told is just to be patient, because the game hasn't come out yet on the Android apps, but yeah, be patient.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a question.
Yeah.
What's Fortnite? I swear. So I'm awful at the game, but my son is just. I'm very proud of him, but he does pretty well, and actually he and I actually had this conversation because we have an Android tablet, but it's available on iPads, but not on Android.
Yeah.
So he was telling me, he's like, oh, it's available. I need to download it. I'm like, wait a second. Let's, first of all, you've got it on the PS4 and we've got it on the Switch and we've got it on PC. Do we really need another copy first and foremost? And second of all, let's take a look at this, because I remember hearing that it was only on Apple products right now.
Yeah.
So I looked into it and I saw that. I'm like, look, and so I told him, I'm like, this is why you need to talk to me before you want to do these things, because people are trying to steal, or people are trying to scam other people by saying things like this.
Yeah.
So that's par for the course when something is as widely popular as Fortnite, that somebody's going to try to capitalize on it and try to make as much off of it, and you're going to get the jerks out there.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy too, because the icon that they're using is from the iOS Apple Store, so it makes it look real, but it's not on the Google Play Store.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And when is it set to come out? Because I can't imagine anybody would realistically think, oh, like the game is set to come out in 3 weeks, but it's really available today.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you know?
I don't think they did. No, I don't think they announced a release date yet. But I think what they're doing is, I think it's just when it's ready, and they're just like, okay, here you go.
Yeah, it's weird, but yeah, I mean, because people are just searching for it on the internets, and then they're finding it. So, yeah. So be cautious. It's not available yet. Don't download the fake app. Xbox, my next item here. Xbox steps back on console VR plans. Not that big of a surprise, I guess, but they were talking about that in 2016 that they were going to bring VR to the consoles, to Xbox, but decided otherwise.
After you, Chris.
I'm a little bit excited that they're not going to have it.
Yeah.
Because my wife can't handle that stuff anyway. So anything that doesn't have VR, there's a better chance that she'll actually want to play it.
I'm on the same page. I don't think we're at a point right now where, VR. There's some really fun VR stuff, but I don't think we're at a point here where we can get the exact same experience that we do in games now. Microsoft, they showed off their HoloLens, and it was all proof, it was all concept footage, but it looked really cool. I liked the idea of somebody looking at their coffee table and having in Minecraft, having the entire world just like show up on the table from a bird's eye view.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just don't think we're at a point in terms of the technology where we can really have an amazing VR experience. But I think within the next generation or two, I think obviously things will get a lot better. But I agree with this. Cut back on the VR plans and focus on getting some really good single party or first party games. Their E3 obviously they did a really good job this year's E3. So focus on the games and that'll get more people back to the Xbox.
Yeah, and I don't even remember Sony talking much about their VR at E3, so I don't know. It seems like they're kind of not giving up, but certainly. Well, no, that's right. That last game that they showed, that secret game that kind of popped up, and like, what is this? That was a VR game. That's right. But yeah, I don't know. I think that like you said, the technology just isn't quite there yet, and maybe it never will be. I don't know. Maybe it's like the 3DS and TVs and stuff like that. I know that Kurt mentioned that on your show. Maybe it's just a fad right now.
Yeah.
As long as we don't get to a world where like everything becomes super VR, because there are like some PS1 games my wife can't handle with that camera, and she loves playing things, but when it makes you sick, you're not going to play, you're not going to spend your money on it, and then they're just not going to make more games.
Yeah.
Yep.
Agreed. The next one, this kind of actually ties both of those topics together. Sony chiefs are under pressure to respond to complaints about crossplay restrictions imposed on Fortnite. So right now, if you have a Switch, you can play Fortnite with, I think, PC and Xbox, correct?
If not now, then it's coming.
Yeah. But not PlayStation.
Yeah, it's funny. They actually released I think Nintendo actually made a video and posted a video on their their social media pages of playing with Xbox players. I saw they had a post on Twitter. It's like, and they actually they tagged Microsoft. And they're like, hey, let's play a game of Minecraft together. But it's I find this so fascinating, and so I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here. Sony is obviously this whole thing is through Sony. This is through Sony's design. It's not like, well, the systems aren't set up for it. It's no, we don't want to share. You are only going to play Sony stuff, and that's it. We don't want you to play with other people. That's what they're saying.
Yep.
And the thing that I find so fascinating, and I think I touched on this on one of our episodes either last week or a few weeks ago, is that this hubris is consistently happening.
Yep.
And going back to the retro days, Nintendo was on top of the world. They were destroying Sega. They were destroying TurboGrafx 16. So they got their heads grew. And by not using a big head code, they thought they were untouchable. We're Nintendo. We're the greatest in the world. There's nothing, we're always going to be popular. So they started they obviously, if you read up on it, Nintendo was notoriously strict to third parties. So then Sony came along, and all the third parties flocked to Sony, and Nintendo got kind of left in the dust between the N64 and the PlayStation 1, and of course the GameCube and the PS2. And then Sony started getting, really cocky about it. And they're like, okay, well, we'll charge $600 for a PlayStation 3. People will pay that much money. And then Microsoft came along and with the 360, and everybody flocked to the 360. And so that started getting all the exclusive games and getting all, the PS3 definitely sold well, but, the 360 out of those two hardcore systems was, that's where a lot of the companies put their main games. Like, there was the Call of Duty exclusivity, timed exclusivity, things like that. Then Microsoft started getting cocky, and they're like, well, with the Xbox One, you have to be online 24/7, or you cannot play somebody else's game, so we're going to kill the used game market. Or if you can't play, if you don't have an online service, you can, we have something for that. It's called a 360. That just got really cocky. And then people flocked to the PS4, and now Sony again. It's falling right back into that rut. I find that so fascinating how they're not learning from their mistakes.
Yeah.
Which is just really mind-blowing to me, because if I'm sitting there, if all my friends have an Xbox One and I want to play with them, I'm not going to sit here and say Sony has all the exclusive games that I want to play between the systems and get a PS4. I'm going to get an Xbox One so I can play with my friends.
Yeah, but see, that's Sony was betting on the fact that you would play. They were concerned. This is one of the Sony chiefs that now works for a game company I don't remember, but he was mentioning how their concern was that people would go out and buy the game on Xbox if it was cross-play. They wouldn't have to buy Sony's games. They wouldn't have to buy PlayStation games. So they were trying to keep it that if you want to play with your friends on PlayStation, you're gonna have to buy PlayStation games.
Yeah, and they the funny thing is with the PR spin they put on it. It was like when people were first complaining about it, when the Minecraft Better Together update was announced, Sony didn't just come out and say, "Oh, we only want people buying our system." They're like, "Right now, we're not. Our infrastructure is not set up for something like that. Just complete and total BS."
Yeah. Well, especially since when Fortnite first came to the PlayStation, I think it was, or maybe it was Xbox, I don't remember. But in any case, there were players on both consoles who were like, "Wait a minute, that's a Sony account." Xbox players would notice that there'd be Sony accounts, and then Sony players would notice that there was Microsoft accounts. So it was turned on accidentally, and then they're like, "Oh, whoops, didn't mean to do that."
Yeah, and another thing to point out, this is just the whole crossplay thing is just so, just such a big turning point in gaming. This is something that's never been done before. So with Fortnite, I think the big ones, Fortnite, Minecraft, and Rocket League, just the idea of being able to play multiplayer games with people who do not own the same system as you, I think that's very impressive. This is like a footnote in gaming history.
Yeah.
I might be buying a system to play Rocket League, but I'm not buying a certain system to play Rocket League, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So it's too bad that, it really is. It's a shame that Sony is being so bullheaded about this, but hopefully they'll listen to, customer complaints, and they'll listen to investor complaints, and hopefully they'll right the course. They'll change their course and right the ship on this.
Yeah. The next item I have here: Pokemon Go. Now you can trade with your friends and has a friends service online too. Woohoo! Should I be playing that again? I don't know.
I answered yes in your Twitter poll.
Okay.
I said yes. Sure, why not? Yeah, I got nothing. I don't play it.
Oh, you never played it?
I did play it for a while, but then I kind of just, drifted away from it.
What about you,
I
Chris?
played it for like 10 minutes, and then my wife made fun of me, and I realized I was going to have to be walking around outside with my phone out, paying attention to that, and I just didn't feel like it, so I turned it off.
That's funny. Yeah, I was really into it when it first came out that summer, and some coworkers and I would go out for walks on our lunch break, and that's what we would do is play Pokemon, and it got us outside. And working in IT, that's probably a good thing to get us walking and stuff. But and that was also our thing. It was like, this game is like motivating us to actually exercise. And once winter came, we were like, we're not going outside anymore. So
yeah. Yeah, it's what I read on this, I think it said that you have to, in order to trade Pokemon, you have to actually be near someone.
Oh.
So it's not, I don't think you just trade over like a Wi-Fi network or something like that. I think
so I have to actually go see people? What's the fun in that?
You mean I have to socialize?
Yeah, that
delete.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just said delete.
Yeah, exactly. That game was a weird thing in social experience and yeah, I guess experience. I was gonna say experiment, but I guess experiment too. I mean, I would be out playing that game, and people would come up and be like, "Oh, you're playing Pokemon? What do you got?" And I'm like, got this." Like, it was weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you meet some very interesting people. Although I will say I probably will pick it up again and play it some more because I'm going to be picking up Pokemon Let's Go.
Yeah.
For the Switch. So, and since those two are compatible, you could switch Pokemon between the two. So I think I'll pick that up and start working on that a little bit more in preparation.
Yeah. Agreed. Speaking of Switch, I just can't believe this next story. Switch hackers are now posting adult-themed imagery into Super Mario Odyssey. When I first saw that, I'm like, how are they forcing adult-themed imagery into the game? And then I read on, and I'm like, okay. So hackers have found a way to customize images on their profile pictures, and then able to display any imagery that they like within Super Mario itself. So there's that balloon, the player balloons in the game, with the Luigi DLC, I guess. And then this will allow users to display their profiles very clearly and visibly. And some of these are pretty racy things, to say the least. Did you guys hear about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this is so many people give Nintendo such a hard time about their online, and obviously they do it to, because they don't want things like this happening, but things like this are going to happen.
Yeah.
I think it's funny for me because I'm an adult, and you can't see, but I'm using air quotes. I'm an adult. But for the kids that play this game, that to me, I mean, that part of me is like, oh my, that's totally and completely wrong. Like, and the hardest thing is I don't know what Nintendo's going to do to combat this. I don't know how they're going to be able to, to stop this from happening. But I can guarantee you, though, that this is like their top priority right now, because this is exactly the kind of thing that they work so hard to fight against.
Yeah.
I've had a Switch for less than a week now. I haven't really gotten to play it yet because somebody in my house keeps playing it.
What games are they playing right now?
Mostly it's been Mario Odyssey, one of the Mario Rabbids ones, and looking through the store at all the things that we've purposely been not looking to see what's there.
Yeah. You would think that these players would be easily found. I mean, if these are their profiles, you would think that Nintendo would be able to do something. I just think it's weird. Like, why would you risk possibly being banned from any kind of online by doing something so stupid and foolish? And I guess they could probably make another account, but just how stupid, right? I don't know.
Yeah, people. Yeah, it's just the best way to explain it is just with one word: people.
Yeah.
People are stupid. I don't know if you remember when before the Switch first launched, there was a guy who said he got a Switch early and did like an unboxing video.
Yes.
And Nintendo came down on him hard, and it turned out that he purchased a stolen Switch from somebody who worked in like the manufacturer or the assembly line or whatever.
Yeah.
But like you know something bad's going to happen if you do something like this.
Yeah.
So why are you doing it anyway? But then the answer to that is people.
Yep. Yep. That's all I had for the news. Do either of you have any other news items?
I don't think there was any. No, you know why? Because we're in this post E3 euphoria, where it's just like, all right, let's let everything sink in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like after eating a big Thanksgiving dinner.
Exactly. Just in that easy chair and just kind of sit back and just question everything about your life.
Yep. Chris, did you have anything else?
No, I mean, I purposely don't look at things because I've usually been at least a generation behind. So,
yeah,
I'm still trying to catch up.
Okay. Yeah. I was looking out for news stuff and I was like, yeah, there's not really not a whole lot out here, so all right, well then let's take a break here, and during this break you can listen to these advertisements of the podcasts that are part of the crossplay compatible, so follow those, and then when we come back we'll get into our hot topic this week. Stay tuned.
Have you ever been reading through a stack of comics and thought, hey, maybe I should see what this Arkham Asylum game is all about? Or been playing Marvel vs. Capcom and felt like you were at a real disadvantage because you didn't know who half the characters were? Well, Play Comics is the show for you. I'm Chris, and each episode, I take a look at video games based on comic book properties and how well they stick to that source material. So, whether you know the comics and want to actually learn how these games work, or know the games and want to know what the hell is going on, go check out Play Comics at playcomics.com, the Brain Trust Bros Network, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Hey, it's Carrington from Real Dudes Podcast, and with me I have some fantastic co-hosts. Guys, why don't you introduce yourselves?
This is Andrew, coming to you from Lynchburg, Ohio.
This is Cody, coming from you also from Ohio.
And this is Kyle, coming to you straight from the armpits of West Virginia. We are an indie gaming podcast. We all share a love for games, and you can check out our show on Podbean. Just search for Real Dudes Podcast. You can also find us on iTunes, Google Play, really any of the podcasting outlets that you like to use. Again, that is Real Dudes Podcast. Be sure to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you love video games, you will love our show.
What's up, everybody? I'm Tyler.
I'm Lucas. And I'm Chris.
And we're better than Static. We meet up once a week and talk about movies, comics, and video games.
I don't want to talk about that.
What? Why are you complaining about all the topics I bring up? I'm trying to sound professional, Chris.
But we're not that good.
We are too good.
We may not be great, but we are better than Static.
You guys can hit up iTunes, Podbean, Google Play, and YouTube to check us out.
Remember that feeling of playing an ultra-hard video game and dying? Over and over and over? Ah! Yeah, so do we. Listen to the Controller Throwers podcast on iTunes and Google Play. And check out the live show every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time at twitch.tv/TCThrowers. The Controller Throwers. Pressing start since 1985.
So you've been listening to our podcast, and you've been thinking, you know what? I can do that. Yeah, you can. You can go through Podbean, our affiliate, and you can get 1 month free by going to podbean.com/GHPC. Podbean is what we use to host our podcast as well. On Podbean, you can host your podcast, and you can publish it there. It's actually quite simple to use. Again, to get 1 month free, you can go to podbean.com/GHPC. That stands for GamerHeads Podcast. All right, thanks everyone, and back to the show. And welcome back to GamerHeads. And this week's topic is, what value do video game podcasts bring to the gaming industry? And can they actually do some harm to the gaming industry? So that's why I brought two of my friends from the Crossplay Compatible network onto the show. Both Mike and Chris have podcasts that they run, video game podcasts that they run. And I wanted to debate this topic, go through it, and get your thoughts. So before we do that, though, why don't you both talk a little bit about what makes your podcast unique, and then we'll go into the topic itself. So I know you kind of mentioned this in the intro, but if you want to go a little bit more in depth with your podcast, Chris, do you want to start?
Yeah, my show isn't really a game review show like a lot of things end up being. It's not a news show. It's saying, here's the comic book. Like, it's more story-wise, how does the game connect to the comic?
Sure.
And how well does it stick there? I mean, you certainly can't get away from, yes, this is a good game or this is a bad game, don't play it kind of thing. But, you know, if it's a horribly played game, but a wonderful storyline, then, yeah, I'm going to say it's a good game with regards to connecting to the comic.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Last week we actually had an episode about can bad games be good? And I think that, you know, if the story is good, but maybe the game is not the greatest, it can still be good, right?
Exactly.
Interesting. And what about you, Mike?
Well, what we do with the controller throwers is we try to make it not sound so much like a podcast, just kind of like so the people I do the show with, I've known them for years and years. So we try to make it sound as if it's, you know, just like you're just hanging out with some friends, just like, you know, going out to dinner, sitting on a couch, you know, just playing a game and talking. You know, we try to put as much humor as possible into our show. A majority of the time, it's at my own expense, which I'm cool with. But to your point, it's a good topic because you know, there are a lot of very similar video game podcasts. So we try to do what we can to kind of stand out.
Sure. So I have a couple questions then with this topic, and we can go through them. So the first thing is, you know, just the broad question itself. Like what value do you think that video game podcasts bring to the gaming industry? I mean, outside of your own podcast, what do you listen to video game podcasts, and why do you listen to video game podcasts?
I definitely do listen to some. It's a nice way to kind of get caught up on new stuff that I suddenly care about more now, since I do have a Switch, finally. You can stop making fun of me for that. But, you know, you get a bunch of varying perspectives that you're not going to get just from reading everybody pointing to the same article. Because even if everybody's looking at the same article, they're going to talk about it a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, and I love listening to video game podcasts. So, and the reason why I like it is because I have like a 45-minute commute to work, and there is a radio station in Chicago that I think they're contractually obligated to play a Red Hot Chili Peppers song every hour on the hour. So I'm getting I get sick of radio. So it's really good to hear just, you know, people talking about, you know, just the topics that I love, you know, the things that I enjoy doing with video games. When I read or when I go to an article, I'll read the very, you know, if it's something that interests me, I'll read probably maybe a couple sentences or a paragraph or two, and then I'll immediately jump into the comments section because I find a lot more enjoyment in the comments section.
Yeah,
and that's what kind of like some video game podcasts are. It's like an audio comments section.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, that video game podcasts are definitely valuable, and in addition to that, they also give you ideas or, you know, bring things to light that you might not know about. For example, Roger, when you had that interview with Relentless Rex,
yeah,
I thought that was hilarious. I was cracking up.
It was.
It was really, yeah, that was really good. And then hearing and one of the other shows talk about that Switch game West of Loathing.
Yeah.
I was interested in the game, but then to hear more about it, I'm like, okay, I really got to pick this up. So it gives me like much more insight onto games that I'm interested in. So they definitely hold value.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that that you will find on video game podcasts that you may not see just from the industry alone is the fact that you'll see games that you never even heard of, and you're like, huh, that's interesting. Like, I've made so many different, friends in the game industry in learning about different games that I've never heard of until people reached out to me and said, hey, you heard about this game? I'm like, no. So that's cool. And the fact that, I have a bunch of friends now that we all like have this network together. I think that's kind of cool too. So,
get all sentimental on us.
But do you think that there's a possibility that there's an oversaturation of video game podcasts, and can that hurt the gaming industry?
See, I don't know really, because if I don't want to listen to a podcast, I can just not listen to it. It's not like, Steve down the street having a podcast is really going to affect somebody else having theirs. He's not taking away listen time just by existing.
Kind of with that, I agree with you on that point. But let's say that there's like video game podcasts, and they're just, they kind of make stuff up, and they're not really well researched. Do you think that hurts other video game podcasts that actually, do some research and are more legit? Can that hurt the industry, the gaming industry, and also the podcast industry?
I think, honestly, I think so. I think that just like with anything, like like a radio show or a talk show or anything like that, if you're not coming into it with knowledge of the subject matter, you're going to have a listening audience that either is confused or upset, because if they know what's going on, they're like, what are these people doing with a podcast if they don't even know what they're talking about? The other point is, I think the one thing, it's so, okay, my brain just went crazy. I got so many thoughts rolling around. I'm trying to figure out which one to do first. So as a gamer, I don't think there's too many podcasts out there. As a podcaster, maybe. But that's just the competitive edge in me. But I think one of the things that can be really toxic about podcasts is console bias or fanboyism.
Yeah.
You can have, like, obviously I am Nintendo, grew up on Nintendo, so that's my thing. But I love my PlayStation 4. The only reason I don't have an Xbox One is because I have a PC that plays the games. So, so financially, that's the only reason. But I appreciate and I understand and I appreciate all the good stuff that's out on the Xbox One. But if you get a podcast with people that are just like haters and do what they can to badmouth other systems and other companies, then to me that can create a problem.
Yeah. Because
your voice is out there and people are going to be listening to you. So yeah, I think it can be pretty toxic at times. Just depends on who's doing it.
And what about the other thought that I had here too was, what about video game reviews? Like, so one thing that I've mentioned in the past is like how like YouTube streamers or Twitch streamers, right, that they can really like ruin a game by like, not, I guess like I guess not to sound like that people can't review games, but when you have like unprofessional reviewers talking about games and people watch that and pay attention to that, like that can really ruin somebody's livelihood of a game. Now, granted, hopefully that more people will pay attention to more reliable sources, but I think the same thing with podcasts. Can like game reviewers of podcasts like basically ruin a game for somebody, and then they will never even try it, and that would ruin somebody's livelihood.
I can certainly see that happening. I usually go and I've got a few people that I listen to for game reviews where our preferences seem to line up pretty well. And, if I end up having to watch a review from some random person where I haven't kind of vetted them like that, then they're not going to be the only person I listen to. That being said, I know there's a lot of people that don't do that. And if they see, Fortnite 2 is super horrible, they just won't touch it.
Yeah, it's a lot of people get their opinions swayed pretty easily by these reviews, and I think that it's a much bigger issue than that, especially with not just Twitch streamers and YouTube people, but people in gaming journalism. It seems to be, and this really, really aggravates me. So I'm going to start getting triggered while I'm talking about this. So heads up. if you hear something that sounds like a table flipping, it probably is. In gaming journalism, it seems to be a popular thing that if a game is not that good, that you just rail into it and make fun of it and say as many mean and rude things as possible about that game. I think there was a game, it was Dementium HD remake or something like that on the 3DS. It's actually a Jules Washington game. And somebody from GameSpot, no, I'm not going to say game, I'm not going to say what it was because I don't want to give bad, if I don't have the outlet correct, I don't want to give the wrong name, but it wasn't GameSpot, gave the game a harsh review. Okay, that's, if you didn't like it, you didn't like it. But the lengths that this reviewer took from a reputable video game website to just completely bash this game and make fun of it and just be just completely, and use that word again, toxic towards this game made me hate this review just because of how unprofessional it was. And that, I think, is part of a bigger issue that I don't know why something like this is acceptable. If you're going to offer constructive criticism on a game and why it's bad, that's fine. But if you're saying something in a review like, the developers were probably drunk the entire time, I don't know, I don't enjoy this piece of garbage, it's to me it's counterproductive. And but if you're gonna stream and if it's not a very good game, just be cool about it. A lot of people put a lot of hard work into that game, and they did the best they can. But if you don't like it, just say, what, hey, this game wasn't for me, it didn't work out well, and these are the reasons why. Just give that constructive criticism. You don't have to be a total jerk about it.
Yeah.
And deep breath. Okay.
So I'm going to go on a tangent for a little bit, but I'm going to make it make sense. I love the British Kitchen Nightmares so much more than the American Kitchen Nightmares because Ramsey is sitting there, actually helping people, actually showing them how to do things the right way, being calm. Where the American one, he's just yelling at everybody. And I feel like there's kind of that same dichotomy there with a lot of game reviewers. They want to go out there, they want to have that angry video game nerd shtick where, he's been doing that for years. Obviously, he can keep doing it because that's his thing. But we don't need 5 million people copying him doing that.
Right.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my point too, Chris. That, I think that, thinking about podcasts and video game podcasts, I know the hard part about being because there's so many options out there. You want to be different. You want to be unique. You don't want to be like every other video game podcast out there. But I do think that there is a trap that people fall into that they say, what's really entertaining? Being a big jerk. People love that stuff. And then they just spew hateful things. And it's not just video game podcasts. We're talking about video game podcasts, but it really stems, you look at our political system and how, man, it just, both sides just bash each other. It seems like this is a thing in America that having civil conversations is not entertaining to people or something, and they'd rather see people fly off the handle and call other people bad names and just, I don't know, I've even heard this in video game podcasts too, and it bothers me. Not as much, I would say, but I have heard it. And I stopped listening to those podcasts. But yeah. So the other thing that I was going to bring up too, the other thing that bothers me, this is one of my pet peeves in video game podcasts, is speculations. It bothers me when people will make up, or not. Speculations is one thing. Maybe it's not speculations. It's more of, you know what they should do? They should make a game like this, and they should do this with the game. And you know what they should be doing? They should make this game. They should make this kind of game like this. And it's like, you're not in the industry to make games. You're in the industry to review games and talk about games, not to be like, you know what I would like to see? I would like to see a game where, you have this character from this video game versus this character from another video game. Wouldn't that be awesome? You should be on it. Nintendo, go do it. It's like, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen.
I kind of do that in my show a little bit.
I kind of do that in my show a lot.
Yeah, but it's different. It's totally different because I think you're coming from different perspectives. I'm talking about like, well, I've heard podcasts talk about, let's talk about games that we want, people to make and like why they should make them. And like they start coming up with these crazy things of, they'll have a whole episode on that. And I'm just like, it's not bringing any value to the gaming industry because it's never going to happen. Never.
Yeah, right. When I do it, it's like, oh yeah, there's a Silver Surfer game, but it'd be so cool if there was one where it's kind of an open world thing, and you have to actually see where Galactus is going and get to that planet before he does, and do something to save it.
Yeah, that's different though, because I feel like you're saying, hey, I'm taking like the ideas from the comic books and here's what we could, this would be a great game, versus, hey, Nintendo, you better be listening up right now. You better make a game like this, giving you gold. I'm like, you're not giving them anything. And they just make up weird crap.
Yeah. One of the things that I do that I've lamented about before is there's a, for the PlayStation 1, there's a game called Triple Play 2001, a baseball game. And it had a home run derby in it where you're in a giant living room, and not only do you get points for hitting the home run, but depending on what you shatter in the living room also gives you points. And I loved that so much, and I've said, like, why hasn't anybody else adopted this, and why hasn't this become a thing? Why aren't we seeing more of this? So that's one thing I've said, man, I would, just to put it out there, like, hey, I hope somebody's listening so they can. I would love to see this again, but that's wishful thinking.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is people thinking that they can make a difference, or that they can force or tell other companies, these multi-million-dollar companies, to do what they're saying. And the problem with that is you and there's a lot of creative people out there that have awesome ideas for video games but do not have the technical knowledge. You can't just tell somebody your idea, because that just brings a whole slew of legality issues.
Yeah.
With it. Like, if you go to a company and you say, this is my idea, here's this binder with all my sketches and stuff, they'll look at it and they'll say, sorry, we can't do it. We can't do anything close to that.
Right.
Or if somebody says, hey, I have an idea that would make your game better. This would be a really fun idea. Wow, thanks for the idea. We really appreciate it, but we can't do that, because if we do, we'd have to put you on the payroll, anything like that. It just creates too much of a hassle, because somebody will then say, or some company will announce, oh yeah, we're adding this mode to our game. And then you've got somebody's just like, oh, all right, now you got a lawsuit on your hands.
Yep.
So.
Oh, I don't even want to think about the nightmares that can come up with this now, since, I can spend exactly $0 and put a podcast out. I can go record 5 million ideas, and then somebody has no idea my show exists, happens to make the same thing I suggest, and then I can go back and say, oh, I talked about this 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because actually there's this game out for the Switch. If you look in the and I could send you a photo of it if you want, but there's this game that's out for the Switch eShop. It's called The Bunker. and the box art that they use for the bunker is the exact same art that I used when I made a flyer for a haunted house that I worked at like about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
On Halloween, everybody, they set up these haunted attractions.
Yeah.
So I made a flyer, and it looked exactly like this art for this game, The Bunker. And I know obviously they didn't take mine. It was just an amazing coincidence. But I could see people doing that, like kind of like these patent sharks nowadays. They'll just throw anything they can out there, and if somebody else does something similar, all right, that's the whole reason I have this patent is so I can sue other people.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I just went and looked up that art, and I mean, it's not bad, but it's not going to take somebody too long to think of doing that kind of thing.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's my biggest pet peeve is, I just think that it brings your credibility down for sure. When you have your whole topic is about games that people should be making right now, and just off the wall weird stuff, and I think to myself, what value does that bring to the gaming industry or to the video game podcast industry? I listened to an hour of this, and now I feel like there was no value to that. There was no value to that discussion whatsoever. And to me, I think that's the biggest thing that I want to see, out of video game podcasts, right? Is like bringing some value to the listeners, so that way, you're asking your listeners to spend an hour of their time or more, because I know we've gone over an hour, but you're asking your listeners to basically, the opportunity cost, right? They could be doing something else with their time, but instead they spend an hour with you. So respect them, respect that time, and bring value to the game industry. So that's my soapbox.
Yeah, I agree. There's enough negativity in the world as it is, and gamers are such a, we shouldn't feed into that negativity. A lot easier said than done, but yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Any final thoughts on that topic before we move on to what games we're playing?
No, I think you hit it pretty much on the head.
Well, if we want to go pet peeves on something else, the thing that I hate the most is people going back and doing reviews of retro games. Not because, I hate that they're doing it, but because I hate that they're these kids that are 18, 19 years old, and they're seeing everything and comparing it to PS4 games.
Yeah.
So, way back when I was in college, 10 years ago, this guy that had a website was doing a series, and I was attempting to review every single NES game, and I was doing them roughly chronologically and stuff. And he had a series where he was going to get with different people and talk to them about games where they had different opinion. And I forget which wrestling game it was, but I gave it a thumbs up because my ratings were just a simple thumbs up or thumbs down, and he hated it. So he goes and he's ragging on this game, and I'm sitting there it's a super early NES game. It's really not that bad.
Was it pro wrestling?
It might have been.
Oh, if it was pro wrestling, I'm going to find this guy. Pro wrestling was amazing. Starman, come on, the flip kick.
Yes.
Pro wrestling was awesome.
It was awesome.
Who is this guy? I need names.
No, I agree with you, Chris.
I'll give you names off the air. Okay.
I agree with you, Chris, because I feel like I've seen that too, where people will review retro games and then they compare it to the technology that we have today. And if I were to take an Atari game and I compare it to games that I see now, of course it's not going to look as good. But man, when I was 6 playing Atari, that was amazing. That was that's what we had, and it was amazing to play Atari baseball and Atari football and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Even though now looking back, I'm I can't play those games because they're just the same. I could play Pitfall and I could play Pac-Man. I still love Pac-Man, but comparing them to now, it's not fair because it's that it's funny that you say that because I have this this new coworker that I work with, he actually has a video game podcast too. I'm trying to get him into the network.
Yeah.
And he asked me, what was your jam? Like what games did you play when you were a kid? Like what was your defining like system? And he said, I feel like NES was. And I said, well, yeah, but I mean, I grew up on Atari first. And I said, the difference between kids now playing games versus me is the fact that I appreciate the fact that I could, looking back and saying, yeah, that's where we came from. And look where we're going. And I'm always a lot more forgiving, I think, on games than a lot of people are, because of the fact that I'm just astonished by what we can do with the technology now. And the fact that people put in so much effort and work into games that I have a really hard time. When I review a game, I'm looking at what the intention was of the developer and not what I thought the developer should do. And I think that's also something that I have a problem with, like podcasts where they may talk about like, well, you know what they should have done? They should have done this. Like that wasn't their intention though. That was not their intention of the game. The intention was X, Y, and Z. If they came out and said, hey, we're going to have online multiplayer, and then they don't, yeah, then you have every right to criticize them. But, I don't know. This is another pet peeve. Thanks, Chris. You got me on another soapbox.
But it's funny because, to your point, I feel really fortunate to have been an 80s child, because especially in the video game industry, I got to witness the evolution, from Intellivision and Atari, all the way to where we're at now, and just to see how amazing, how far we've come in terms of video games. It's just, but at the same time, I try to stay humble enough to appreciate the games that I grew up with, the Pitfall, the Keystone Capers, Qbert, things like that. And it's just really cool just to see this change. But yeah, like people, that didn't do that. It's actually funny because if you remember that scene in Back to the Future 2 where Marty McFly is showing those two kids how to play Wild Gunman.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you got to use your hands.
Yeah.
That's a baby's toy. So it's funny. Like that's kind of one of the things from Back to the Future that actually came true, because people are thinking like that now about some old school games. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And I mean, look at even having podcast. I mean, man, that's an evolution in itself. Whoever thought that we would live in a world where there'd be an abundance of video game podcasts where people can listen to and interact even with listeners. So yeah. So if you have ideas, speaking of interacting, if you have thoughts on video game podcasts and if they hurt or help the industry, let us know. You can tweet us at GamerHeadsPC. That's probably the best way to get a hold of us. But we also are on Facebook. You can go to facebook.com/GamerHeadsPodcast. And you can also email us at gamerheadspodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, guys, before we leave, I'd like to go through the games that we are currently playing. And we'll start, Chris, with you. Since you got a Switch, what games are you currently playing?
Well, nothing on Switch, because again, I haven't really been allowed to touch it yet. I'm getting back into Last of Us. I still haven't completed it because I kept picking up other things, and my wife picked up she's changing jobs, so her hours are changing, which means I don't have to kind of warn her that I'm coming up on a bunch of walkers that I'm gonna try to kill because she thinks they're disgusting.
I know it's sacrilegious. I have not played that game. I have it. I haven't played it yet.
So far, it's really good, and I heard that doesn't really change much.
Yeah,
I honestly just played it for the first time probably about 2.5, 3 months ago. I went through it.
Did you like it?
So here's my thoughts on it. It's an amazing game. It really is. Like the mechanics, the story is good. Wasn't a fan of the ending. I'm not going to say anything. It's just, to me, I don't know. But you know what? To my logic, it didn't make sense. So to that, I also kind of feel maybe it was overhyped because, for how many years people are saying this is the greatest game ever made. This is changing games forever. So I got really hyped about it.
Yeah.
It was in my backlog for a long time, and then I finally played it. I'm like, yeah, this is a really good game, but I don't see it being as good as so many people are saying.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, not saying it's a bad game. It's an amazing game, and I really enjoyed playing it. I'm glad I got to play it. But maybe to me, this is just something that the hype was bigger than the game itself.
Interesting.
I can see that.
And Chris, so you probably play a lot of video game comic book.
I do play a lot of video game podcasts.
I meant to say, you must play a lot of comic book games because of your podcast.
Right. So,
are you currently playing something right now?
Right now, I need to start playing The Tick again so I can get ready for that.
Ooh.
And Arcade's Revenge.
Oh, sorry, man.
I know.
That game is so bad. And I was just saying how much I don't like it when people say bad things, but God, that game was so hard.
Well, there's a difference in that game is so bad, I don't know why they did it, blah, 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 and yes, this game just isn't good.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I'm really hoping I can get past the Spider-Man level this time.
Yeah. But as a kid, I would play that game so much because I wanted to love that game, but man, I had a hard time with that game.
Oh, I'm totally with you on that one. I somehow have 2 or 3 copies of it just from picking up lots at the flea market, and I want to get rid of all of them.
I have not played it, and judging by your comments, I'm kind of thankful that I haven't.
Anything else, Chris, that you've been playing?
That's about it right now. I need to just play things for my show and spend way too much time with them.
Sounds good. Mike, what about you?
I played a little bit of Fortnite. I get back into it, and then I get killed, and then I say, I hate this game. And then, 2 days later, I'm like, oh, I'll try it again. And then same thing happens. It's a vicious cycle. So I've also been playing some Stardew Valley. I was streaming that, and this was one game that really, when I first started playing it, I really just did not like it. I'm like, how are so many people enjoying this game? It's so stupid and boring. And then 4 months later, I decided to give it another chance, and I'm glad I did. So it took me about 3 hours to really get into the mechanics and everything, and now I'm really, really deep into the game with the whole, the farming and everything like that, and developing relationships. Although my girlfriend, I believe, was cheating on me, so now I'm really angry about that. So yeah, so I'm trying to get my revenge on her. Her mom is an alcoholic, so I'm going behind her back and giving her mom beer every day.
Yeah, but her mom's driving a school bus, dude.
And I gave her a beer before she drove the bus.
We're talking in game, right? Because I haven't played this at all.
Yes, this is in game.
Okay.
Yeah, my in-game girlfriend. But I'm having a lot of fun with Stardew Valley. And the good thing, one of the things I like about Stardew Valley is, and I loved Animal Crossing, but you go away from Animal Crossing for 2 weeks, and you come back, and you've got a lot of cleaning up to do. You got to rebuild these relationships. The one thing I liked about Stardew is that you can play it, so the game saves at the end of each day. So it saves at 2 a.m. or something like that. So you can play the game for half an hour, save it, put it down and then come back to it a few days later or a few weeks later, and you're at that next day. So the game doesn't continue going without you.
Yeah.
And I really didn't realize how much I appreciated that until I really started getting into this. So I've been playing Stardew Valley. Like I said, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. And then I've also been playing, and this is one I can't get enough of. No, so normally I'm good with games. I'll go crazy into a game for about 9 months or so. Left 4 Dead was one of them. Nonstop. And then just one day I'm like, okay, I think I'm done with this. But this one I've still been going strong on, and it's been out for a little over a year, is Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
On the PlayStation 4. And it's just so much fun. One of the guys on our show, Brian, he recently picked up the game, so he and I have been playing, and it's just every single round. I just have so much fun. I was actually doing pretty good, so I was whoever was playing Jason. So with Friday 13th, it's basically 1 on 8. So one person is randomly chosen as Jason, the other 8 are counselors, and the counselors have to try to escape the Camp Crystal Lake, and Jason's job is to try to kill the counselors. So there's only certain things you can do to escape. Like you got to find a battery for the car somewhere in the map and repair the car and then try to drive out, or try to fix the phone and then call the police, things like that. So every match is different because the items are hidden in different spots along the map. So I was actually doing really good. So you can actually attack Jason and stun him, but he'll still sit up and after a few seconds. But I was doing a really good job with kind of protecting the other players by just running up to Jason and cracking him in the back of the head with a bat. We had one. We were escaping in the boat. You could repair a boat. So Brian and I actually got into the boat, and we hadn't escaped in the boat in a long time. So all we're doing is just screaming at each other, because when Jason gets into the water, he moves 3 times as fast.
Oh my gosh.
So we're just drive, and I'm I don't know where to go. I can't pull up the map because I'm driving the boat. He's just turn left. I'm okay. He's no, the other left. I'm I don't know where to go. So it gets, when you're trying to escape the camp, it does get really chaotic. So that's one of the other games I've been playing. It was Friday the 13th.
Yeah, that's a great game from a streaming perspective that people can watch. I mean, that game was really built for, hey, stream this game so people can watch it. That's what I really love about that game.
Yeah, exactly.
I did see, though, and this is not that breaking news, but I did see that they're not going to get any more updates for content because of...
yeah. That's right. Yeah, I was so aggravated when I saw it. Actually, it's funny because it goes back to people, exactly why these video game companies won't accept submissions because of legality issues. So some guy that was I think he was a writer. I think he wrote the first or co-wrote the first one, is now suing whoever owns the rights of New Line or Warner Brothers, whoever owns the rights to Friday the 13th, because he wants more money. Yeah. And so as a result of this lawsuit, anything Friday the 13th related has to come to a halt, which includes the Friday the 13th game, which really sucks because people were really looking forward to this map based on Jason X. So the spaceship map.
Yep. That's too bad. Anything else, Mike?
That's pretty much what I've been playing this week.
Okay. For myself, let's see. I've been playing. I have dabbled in Fortnite on the Switch. I will say this. I do like it more on the Switch. I don't know why, but I couldn't get into it on Xbox or PlayStation. But now it's on the Switch. I don't know. I find it more enjoyable, but I'm still not good at it. So I'm playing a little bit of Fortnite. What else have I been playing? There's a game that I have been playing and I can't talk about yet. So I'm under an NDA on that one. So once I am able to talk about it, then I'm super excited about it because it's really fun. I'm super excited about talking about that game. And I've been playing a little bit of Shaq Fu. That game is interesting. The new one.
Nice.
And then you also inspired me to start playing Stardew Valley. I mean, I've been playing that game on and off, but yeah, I'm not very far in the game, and I'm struggling with understanding what I should be doing because I don't know. It's just so open world, and I'm I want to build my farm, but then I only have so much time. Should I be building relationships with people? So that's kind of where I'm at with Stardew Valley.
I can give you all the tips you need because I know exactly how you feel. I was in that exact same situation before I got my Stardew Valley life in order. So that's what I've been playing.
So before we go, then, why don't you guys tell people how they can get a hold of you? Mike, why don't you start?
Sure. You can find the Controller Throwers podcast. We're on iTunes, Google Play, and thecontrollerthrowers.podomatic.com. Just search for The Controller Throwers. You can also find us on Facebook Facebook.com/TCThrowers, Twitter @TCThrowers, and we're at Twitch.tv/TCThrowers.
Nice. And Chris, how can people get a hold of you?
You can find Play Comics over at playcomics.com, and I'm on Twitter at PlayComicsCast. Nice. And obviously the podcast is on all your normal podcasting things.
Nice.
All the things.
Oh, yep. And for GamerHeads, you can follow us on Twitter at GamerHeadsPC. You can also follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/GamerHeadsPodcast and email us at GamerHeadsPodcast@gmail.com. And you can listen to new episodes on our Podbean site. So it's GamerHeadsPodcast.podbean.com. And also we're on iTunes and Google Play and anywhere else that you may listen to your podcasts. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the show. It was a real pleasure having you guys on, and a really interesting topic. So I really appreciate you both joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having me on. It's always a great time to be on somebody else's show where I don't have to worry about editing.
Yeah, same here. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, then for Mike, Chris, and myself, thank you so much for listening to GamerHeads, and GamerHeads out.